one person at the back can hear me. The rest, and only this side. This side is a problem. Amniski, you can't hear me? You can hear me. All right, so thank you for your patience. So we are now getting into the subject matter of the conference. My name is Dr. Caroline Kabaria. I am the chair of the Scientific and Technical Committee. If you look at your programs, you see we are now in the concurrent sessions. There are 3 sessions going on at the same time. There are 3 sessions which are going on at the same time. We have the one which is here in the auditorium, which is going to be an abstract session. So we have some presenters who submitted papers that were evaluated by the technical committee and they were accepted for presentation. We have another room named Hibiscus, where there's a panel session that is going to go on the topic we had in the morning on innovations and technologies. We also have another session going on, another abstract session on the same topic of innovations and technologies in room Iris. There's a convener session in the room named Orchards, and the topic there is leveraging digital data. So I'm just mentioning this in case you are not aware that there are other rooms. Please, you can always reference the program, and you're free to go to the one that interests you. But I'm glad that you're here. So we have the program, how it's going to run. We have a series of presentations, and I will invite every speaker. I will ask the technical team here to help us in dimming the lights so that you can see our presentation. I don't know if there's somebody close. We need the lights at the stage to be dimmed. So this session looks at promoting good governance in water and sanitation. And what we will have every abstract presenters is allocated 5 to 8 minutes. Kindly stick to time because we don't want to, we're already late from the morning program. So you'll have 5 to 8 minutes to make your presentation. When you finish, kindly take a seat here, and we'll invite the other presenters to also present. And once they're done, if we have any questions to the audience, please feel free to interact with us. There should be a mic roving around if you have any questions, and we'll take them. So we hope to be done before 1:30. That gives us 1 hour. Then we can break for lunch. So to start off, I am going to invite Ms. Mary Morioki, who's going to be presenting to us an abstract on raising the standards of public toilets in Kenya. Ms. Morioki will be followed by a presentation from Priscilla Olwoch and the team from Sanitation on a citywide inclusive sanitation plan. So please get ready to present after Ms. Morioki. Thank you and welcome.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, or is it afternoon? My name is Mary Morioki. I'm glad to be here in the Women and Youth Water and Sanitation Conference. Just waiting for it to come on. And my topic is raising the standards of public toilets in Kenya. And my first question to you will be, can you hear me? Can you hear me? I need help here.
This one is working.
Okay.
So
okay. Good afternoon. My name is Mary Morioki. I'm going to do a presentation on raising the standards of public toilets in Kenya. And I'm glad to be here in the Youth and Women Sanitation Conference. I'm from a company called Green Day Environmental. So this is me. I've run Green Day Environmental for 3 years. We've done sewer maintenance. And I've also done portable toilet and exhauster services in Brooms Limited. And I've also done governance training through the Women on Boards in Kenya. And I have a bachelor's degree in commerce. So the abstract was looking at how our public toilets are and how we can do better. And I'm sure you've gone to places where you thought, wow, this is Kenya, we can do better with all what we have. Have you gone to a restaurant and then you've seen the menu, the price of the menu, and then you go to the toilets, and then they don't go hand in hand, right? The price is so high, but the quality of the sanitation is low. I think we need to start changing this so that our sanitation is good everywhere. It doesn't matter where you are, where you're in urban areas or in rural areas, we all need to be good. So Green Environmental, we are a sewer and drainage maintenance company. We're women-led, and we have 3 years experience. So there are basically different types of public toilets. There are pit latrines, Asian toilets, the ones you call the squat toilets, the Western toilets, the ones that are here. Then there's open defecation, and there are portable toilets. So public toilets are a mix of them, because you're in the highway and there are no toilets, you'd use open defecation. So a clean toilet gives dignity, gives the user comfort, and prevents the spread of disease. So I'll give you my journey in public toilets. There's a time I was traveling somewhere by bus, and it was a distance that was very far. So we stopped somewhere, and wherever we stopped, toilets were opened, and I was directed to the urinals. You can guess how I was able to use a urinal. Basically, the trajectory is impossible. So what happened after? The attendant who opened the toilet was looking at me funny. What was I supposed to do? It's impossible. It's unlike now that innovation has grown. There's actually adaptable gadgets that women can use in urinals, right? That was then. So, and it has been, it's that and different experiences that maybe made me even start a portable toilet company based on the experiences of public toilets. Because when you go to a public toilet, it's either too dirty. And now 15 years ago, before there was rehabilitation of the public toilets, you could not even enter, even at the door, because people were using the toilets everywhere. Now we have really advanced, but we need to go at a higher level. We are still not where we need to be, because we need clean public toilets everywhere. So I once visited a public facility in a government office, and there were 2 kinds of toilets. So there was one that was nicely built, and it was closed, and only the people who had the key could access. And the second one is what was given for the public to use. So you know, when you need to use the toilet, you don't care what you're using at that particular time, right? You just do it, right? So I used the second one, and I was asking myself, why do we have to get this? Well, yet sanitation is a right that anyone should be able to use the best, right? And not just anything. If you can notice, even it's next to a garbage bin, so it's already looking bad. So a state of public toilets usually is that you find them either closed, you have to ask for the key, or there is none provided, ujipange, you know? And yet, our bodily functions, at one point in time, you have to visit the toilet. And then you go to certain toilets, you find that jerry cans are modified for pouring water. And my question is, when did we get here? And what can we do now to make it better? And toilet abuse is rampant, yeah? And then you find that there are certain places where toilets are not covered by sewer, and there are no toilets in the streets or in the beaches. We can have different consideration like portable toilets so that we don't say there are no toilets. There are ways that people can have dignity, because a good toilet gives dignity to the user. So when I talk about a toilet abuse, there was no even point of me putting a picture, because you can imagine the worst toilet you have gone to, right? It's in imagination. There was no point of me putting in the picture. But think about it. What were your thoughts when you went to a bad toilet and you were looking at it and you're like, no, I have to go. You just closed your eyes and did it. What can we do better? Because it's things that we have to do every day because of our bodily functions. So we need a new direction in the way we view public toilets, yeah? Because if you go to someone's house and you're looking at it, then after that you go to the toilet, you're like, oh no. It decides on how you'll use the toilet, right? These are private questions. You might not tell your host, but you know. You're like, I don't like going to so and so's house because when it gets time to go to the toilet, I don't like the way theirs looks. So sometimes you've never seen that perspective, but people judge you on the condition of the toilets, whether in your offices or in your house. So it's about time that people started looking at these things. So we need a change in mindset on toilets, on what should be done. I think when people are considering things, the first place that they need to check out is the toilet. Because unfortunately, someone will always tell you, hey, I need to go this place. And the thing is that you can't determine the time and the duration. So we need a clean and accessible toilet, yeah? Everywhere, anywhere, and it is good for a healthy nation. And when you think about our highway points, let's say you're traveling to Kisumu, the first place you stop usually is Nakuru. You know what Nakuru is? It's a toilet point, because when people stop, the first thing they go is to the toilet, right? And facilities that have the best toilets attract the best clientele. It's not the restaurants, people. It's the toilets, and people need to start looking at it as toilets as opportunities that when you have a good toilet, all the vehicles we want to line up, then you can have the restaurants working on. So it's very, very important that we think toilets as facilities that can attract business as opposed to the restaurants. Because you've stopped at a place and then you're like, it's only that I don't have a choice. I'm here, it's the driver choosing. But if it was the women choosing, because women are the ones who are most sensitive to good toilets, they will not choose that facility, will choose another facility. So government needs to set example, because unfortunately, when we go to government offices, we find that we need to go to the toilet. And sometimes you find that it's government having enforcement of toilets in public health. But the question is, when you go to their office, is their toilet good enough? You know, it doesn't make sense that you're here policing people to do good toilets, while when we go to the facility that you are, it's not a good toilet. So we need open toilets that are accessible as well. Then we need clean toilets. Then we need flushing toilets, and there can be different ways of doing it. We can recycle the same water, as in have water waste systems instead of pouring water. And we need to set budgets to make it happen. It's really, really important. Then we need internal enforcement, for example, an ER. For example, you can have this department, there is this money that has been set aside, that the toilets in the government offices need to be the best. Then when they're the best, then they can enforce. It will just come naturally. If the toilets are good in a government facility, private sector will not have an excuse, because now the government will have raised the standard. So we really, really need to do things differently, because the toilets need to be cleaner and they need to be manned and checked all the time. So I'm hoping this will change. So what is the recommendation, basically? It's a combination of solutions, so that first, toilets are accessible, the public toilets are clean, they are suitable for use, so that we don't have males or, women using urinals. Sustainability, people are aware where the toilets are. There are budgets set for them. There are more toilets everywhere, depending on the population. And there is enforcement, so that clean toilets are a right rather than an afterthought. So it's everyone's responsibility to have a clean toilet wherever we go, and it's important. So it is nice that the water service providers, if we can start with you, set the example, then you can spread the good word. So it's everyone's responsibility. So clean toilets everywhere, and clean toilets in public places. And I love to leave you with something. The toilet is the one that works the hardest, and it's yet the one that is not recognized. So when you go to the toilet today, say, yeah, I'm glad that I have a clean toilet today, and I'll make a difference in having clean toilets everywhere. Thank you.
Another round of applause for Ms. Mary Mareki. So I think we were told that by CEO WASPA yesterday, the statistics on how much waste we generate every day and how it is a wasted potential. So thank you for that presentation. So we are going to have the next presentation, which is by Sorry, guys. Is Jackie Waithaka in the room? Amusha? Zainab, are you in the room? Zainabu? Yeah. Yes, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Kengere Sylvia, working with Sanitation Limited. For this session, Priscilla Oloch from Malindi Water was supposed to be the main presenter, but due to some family situation, she was not able to be here. But we've been working with Malindi Water for about 3 years now. And Priscilla in person, she's so passionate about water and accessibility to everyone. On this session, we're going to talk about how we're going to promote women and youth participation in WASH through using citywide inclusive sanitation plan. In East Africa region, there's so many citations done from different companies. And we can see 90% of waste is not treated. And from the recent statistics, we are seeing population is increasing each and every day. When population increases, it means waste also increases. But still, we don't have the enough infrastructure or plans to be able to deal with this waste. So this is where we have a problem. Back in 2019, Malindi Water decided to have like a sheet flow diagram. A sheet flow diagram, it normally shows like how waste is normally physically transported in a city. So in Malindi, you can see only 25% of waste is safely managed. And out of the 25, only 1% of wastewater is treated. The 24% is contained but is never emptied. And this 24% is normally from restaurants. So where did these 75% go to? What happens with the 75% of waste in Malindi, since Malindi doesn't have a sewerage connection? So this is normally like a major problem, and this is a problem that comes normally faces to women and youth. How does poor sanitation in Malindi and everywhere impact women and youth? we normally know in most households, women are the ones that are in charge of provision of sanitation services, e.g. cleaning, cooking, and take care of everyone in the house. So if we lack these basic services, it becomes like a challenge for the women to provide for them. I remember someone in the pre-conference mentioned she was in Naivasha, and all the way in Nairobi, someone was calling her, "Hey, mom, there's no water in the house." So normally it's upon women to normally know how to provide these sanitation services. And when we lack, the presenter before me talked about lack of toilets or lack of infrastructure for us to use when we're going to the toilet. And you'll find women going to do like open defecation, especially in the highways or at night. And what does this risk to women and small girls? Normally, these are you being vulnerable to sexual violence. Another challenge is women spend a lot of time in trying to collect water, firewood, and every other thing to be able to manage a household. And these normally, this is time that people can spend in especially going to do other chores and even set up businesses and not worry about collecting the basic needs. When it comes to the part of youths, lack of these sanitation services, there's a study done by the Ministry of Health and in 2014 showing the sanitation profiles of different counties. And poor sanitation shows like stunting is like one of the number one causes of poor sanitation in growing kids, and this normally affects how the youths are going to develop along the way. We have different youths who normally do like manual pit emptying, and when they're doing this, it's like lack of dignity. They're not happy to provide these services and be comfortable in telling each and every person, this is the kind of job I'm doing. So you need to like have the right kind of infrastructure to help them provide these services. And every time we do like manual pit emptying, or we don't have the necessary PPPs to be able to deal with waste, all of us are at risk of contracting diseases. That's all from me. My colleague is going to talk about the citywide inclusive sanitation plan that we did in Malindi. Thank you.
Thanks, Sylvia. So just before I go into this, how many people have heard about citywide inclusive sanitation here? Okay, I don't see a lot of hands up, so it's a good time to explain. You can't hear me. Can you hear me better? Okay, great. So what is citywide inclusive sanitation, and how can it help women and youth achieve safe sanitation? Citywide inclusive sanitation is an approach to urban sanitation, and this was started by the global community of sanitation. And it basically what it means is it provides different options, technological, but also social, environmental. So it's a very inclusive approach, and it provides a menu of technological options. So it's very context specific and can be adapted when required and depending on who requires it. But most importantly, it considers the need of its vulnerable population, and this includes women and youth. And so this as a framework and how MWSI has applied it, you'll see some examples as I move forward. It also engages local communities, which is key in delivering safe sanitation. So how can we use this approach? Firstly, the citywide inclusive sanitation approach calls for gender mainstreaming during the planning process. So the decision makers bring on more women and youth as decision makers. And what does this ensure? It ensures efficiency. It ensures, as our previous presenter said, if we don't have women being in this decision making forum where they can talk about their own needs for safe public toilets or how they want them to be designed, then it makes no sense if women are never going to use those toilets. So efficiency, safety, again, is a big issue when sanitation is involved. Improved health, Sylvia just mentioned why it's important to have safe sanitation. Empowerment, it's not just about having been on the panel as a token, but actually being empowered to make these decisions for themselves and their community and households. And social capital, and I think we mentioned this, we saw this earlier, that women have a lot of say in the community, in the household, they have really good networks of people, and so this kind of ensures that the sanitation needs are being met for everyone. Secondly, the approach also calls for capacity building and job creation. So how I'll go this way. How do we do capacity building? Sensitization and awareness creation. This is really important, and we've seen this. And conferences like these are amazing because you have so many people participate, but this is sort of awareness creation as well, and also on how to do more, how to engage women and youth more in the operational side of things. So that's the first way to do it. And then how else can we involve women and youth? You've seen public toilets as our previous presenter mentioned, and a lot of them can be managed, and we've seen this in other places around the world that toilets are managed by women. And of course, having this delegated management contract, giving ownership to women and youth to actually run these institutions and facilities and to make money out of it and make it a business, that's something that you can look at. And same with small and medium enterprises. There's been a lot of research on this, and we've seen this across, even in Kenya, some in other parts of Africa as well, of how can we engage women and youth. And you'll see in this picture in the center, this is from our factory in Naivasha, actually. We have a lot of women being agents of sale, like production. And so they're actually working in the factory. So how do we engage more women and youth this way? The third thing is tailored products and services. We're looking more, I've been talking more on the supply side, but also with the demand side. If there is more option for women and youth to have products that make sense for them, for example, look at shared sanitation facilities, as Emery was saying, have maybe baby changing stations, or even little things like ensuring there's a waste basket in the facility, a hand washing station. It goes a long way when you're talking about inclusivity, especially with women, young women, and youth as well. And of course, a way to do that is also making sure that your staff is diverse. You have, it ties in with what I said about the planning. If there are more decision makers and there's a larger voice on the planning side, then there's more on the demand side. You know that the products, the infrastructure is tailored towards you as women and youth, and so you use it more. If there's more demand, there's more supply, it becomes a good business proposition as well. And this is something else that the approach calls for, is looking at technological innovation, and how can we do that in the sanitation sector. We've seen that with our company, but even other companies who work on the waste to value approach. And firstly, looking at more environmentally friendly substitute for firewood is a good start, because as you know, a lot of the burden, household chores burden, falls on women. So when they're cooking indoors, if you have firewood, it creates indoor pollution, and we've seen that cause a lot of health issues among women. So having a more environmentally friendly substitute, which is kind of like these fuel briquettes in the picture, or even with compost, making sure that productivity is increased for women and youth who work on these farms. So this is another way to use this approach, making sure that we are more technologically forward in terms of making technology more inclusive and thinking about the needs of women and youth. And lastly, communicators of change, and we've heard this a lot today, and we keep hearing this. the role that women play in the community, the networks they have in terms of awareness creation, like children mostly always call their moms for whatever they need with water and sanitation. It's also a behavior change component that ties in with being a communicator of change. And this works really well with awareness creation, engaging also youth. How do you formalize some of these emptying processes so that it's not unsafe for the youth, like Sylvia was mentioning? What are some of the standard operating procedures? And MWSI has, as you can see, done a lot here. Malindi Cleanup Day, engaging women and youth from the beginning as communication agents. That's something this framework also allows you to do. This is something that MWSI has participated in. The World Bank had sponsored a leadership program. And as you can see here, have you been able to hear me? Yeah, okay. You can see here only 4 out of 88 MDs are women. And this is something that the report suggested. In the water and sanitation utilities. And as you can see here, some of these utilities do have women in leadership positions. But what we found through this work as well is that it's mostly not in managerial positions that women work in these utilities. So these numbers are good evidence and something to build up on as we move forward, and just not thinking more on how we can engage women, not just in the utility, but in managerial positions. I am going to skip this one just for the sake of time. I think so the mentorship circle, I think this is something that MWSI has worked with the World Bank with. And how do we have more mentorship in this sector? How do we train, as I think someone said this in the morning, is making sure that we help each other. Women and youth in managerial positions can provide, support to people who are aspiring to be in their positions. And so this is something that we've also seen, reshaping female leadership. I talked a little bit about where the women were in managerial positions earlier, but mostly trying to get some of these orange dots all over the map and having more leadership roles for women in some of more utilities. I'm also going to skip this one. And lastly, this you can see, this is the training that MWSI had participated in with women. And as you can see, this picture is really good evidence of how much training can go forward. And I think as we move forward, thinking more on how do we provide this capacity building, mentorship, and some of these opportunities for women and youth to grow into some of these positions. That's something that MWSI is doing, and we're hoping to do with them as partners. Thank you very much.
Kindly let's give another round of applause from that team. So thank you very much for that presentation. So we are going to have one more presentation from Jane. She's going to introduce herself and she'll tell us what her presentation is about. Sorry.
Hello, good afternoon. I hope I'm audible enough. Yeah, my name is Jane Jaggi. I want to share with you this afternoon on our theme. And I want to share research I've carried out during my master's in sanitation. And I want to share on the exploration of policy and practice in operation of fecal sludge and septic management for improved sanitation delivery in small towns. I had a case in Warangai City in Telangana State, India. Yeah. Part of my education and professional qualification, I have a master's in sanitation from the Water Institute of HIG in Netherlands, a BSc in community development from Chuka University, water engineering from Kenya Water Institute. I'm currently working with the county government of the Rakanithi, having worked for 9 years with Nithi Water and Sanitation Company as the technical services manager, and also having some experience of some years with the Ministry of Water, and also I've done some consultancy with some NGOs on emergency relief programs for humanitarian response to the flood and war responses in Chad and Mozambique. Part of my experience is partly passion on project implementation and community empowerment, and I want maybe to share a bit as part of the introduction of my presentation on the success of a project that has been carried out by many WSPs on the HAPSA project funded by the WSTF. Nithi successfully implemented the first phase of this project, and that also led to the Water Sector Trust Fund having the award from the UN. That I also got a chance for a full scholarship to study the sanitation funded by Bill and Melinda Gates in Netherlands. And so, as I said, I want to share part of this theme as an exploration of what I did in India as my research. On background, we have just few years to the SDG, and 4.2 billion people in the world lack safely managed sanitation. I know we have the statistics, and we know even out of the many reports and like the impacts that have been coming out, and this challenge is for real. An influx of urban migration has led to the rapid growth, of course, of the population in the cities. And of course, now that's making it very tough or difficult for our systems. And therefore, we have a population that really gets the highest effect of this. Of course, that's on sanitation and water, and that's the women, the children, the vulnerable people. And especially so also for those living in the informal settlements. Then I was looking at fecal sludge management and management, which entails, of course, the management of the entire service chain. I know we know what entails in the service chain. That's from the toilet through the containment, conveyance, treatment, and of course the health use. And what we have seen is that most of this chain, or part of this chain, or modules of this chain is not complete. And therefore, we cannot say that we are achieving the SDGs when this chain is not fully achieved. So out of also the research, out of also part of the information we have, out of the many also researches that have been done, is that FSSM lacks formal mechanism of management resulting to absence of effective, safe, and sustainable sanitation. Yeah, the problem, I just listed up like 3 of them. Of course, we have several governments have put strands towards improvement of sanitation through programs and policies. Like I've just mentioned, we had the HAPSA project that really impacted, and especially in the low-income areas. We also have policies. I know most of us Kenyans are aware that we are now also developing the sanitation policy, and those are good strides that are being made towards the achievement of the SDG 6.2. However, the focus has been so much so on the adoption of the toilets and not the entire service chain. I just mentioned that. So it's like we've just been preaching the gospel of every homestead with toilet, but not really following the entire service chain. We don't know now that if the toilets that we've put up in these areas, when they fill up, what happens? If you're not connected to the centralized sanitation systems, then what happens from there? And we know, of course, how this impacts to our environment, to our public health. And of course, also we mentioned the human rights aspect when we talk about the rights to sanitation. And then we have seen that sanitation sector has not consistently included the gender lens in policy formulation, which has led to inequalities and gender-based barriers to safe sanitation. This is something that has really been highlighted in this conference. I think we allude to it that there is that gap. You find that we've been having some power relations and that women have not been given the space, and especially in some very, very important areas like this. Yeah, so the aim of the study was to critically analyze the policy and institutional frameworks as well as practices. So what I was looking at is the policies that were already existing there, and also now trying to see if they match the practices on FSSM. This was to look at to what extent they support safe and sustainable sanitation. Of course, the main question was how our responsibility to be able to check out on if the practices and the policies are matching, and to check out on how responsibilities, how powers and risks are distributed in the FSSM governance structure in the city. Of course, there are some objectives. I was looking at the context, the content of the policy itself. I was also looking at the practices, and the practices was like looking out through the service chain, the practices that are entrenched in the policy. Of course, of interest was also to identify if these policies have the gender aspect, and I call it the gender lens aspect of it in them. Of course, RU also is checking on the opportunities and the challenges. Yeah, of course, that's a methodology. Of course, it was a case study. I said it was a certain city, and it was a qualitative study. Of course, all alluding to checking out on how responsibilities, power, and risk are distributed. Of course, through the methods of the secondary sources and the primary sources, interviews, participant observations, and of course and also the focus group discussions. Yeah, like we can see, this is a part of me and my colleagues also doing some focus group discussion with some women, self-help women group, and the other one was an observation I had followed, the MTS, as they were doing their business. Yeah, I want to take some time to at least just have a few minutes to discuss on the results, and also picked a bit of the results. You saw I have several objectives, looking at the content, of course, itself. There were issues with it, and also trying to see now how this happens, how they really match the practices, as I mentioned. So, of course, they highlighted the gaps and the vulnerabilities in the FSSM that needed further strengthening, of course, with a clear indication that indiscriminate disposal of septic adversely impacts on the general public and the environmental health. That one was also what was a key finding. And of course, having these places around the decentralized treatment facilities and the MTS that are following, then we could see that not much or not all that they exhausted was getting into the treatment facilities, meaning that then it was getting indiscriminately disposed. There was an indication of unclear roles and responsibilities that are not aligned and require good coordination, instituting a likelihood of reversing the already made progress in access to the sanitation. I think we also alluded that even in Kenya we have had some progress, but now if these practices don't match the policies, if they don't talk to one another, if they don't align, then the good things that we have done may be reversed. Women are key players in FSSM, and that one we have, I say throughout the moments that we've been here, we've really accepted that they need to be they are key players. We very well know that even from our specific levels. And one of the areas that we can leverage on them was like for this city, they have the self-help groups, which I think were very organized. And of course, they were touching like every woman, not really those that are educative, not those that are read well literate, but you always find even within our communities, we have self-help groups that can leverage on actualization of safe, effective, and sustainable sanitation. Also, what was of key importance was regular reviews and updates of the existing policies. So the finding was that there were gaps, and the gaps were there, and the gaps were because when the policies were being formulated, the issues of the practices were not really a consideration. Therefore, anytime you're doing policies, let them begin from a picture of what is really in practice so that they really speak to what you are going to put into the policy. And this now causes us the challenge that we do like national policies, but we need to narrow down these to context-specific policies or guidelines because we have varying contexts. So like when we do a general policy that talks about the country, Kenya, then of course we are not speaking that every state may be as a centralized system. Others don't have. So at local levels, we should have like policies or guidelines that are system-specific and also that are context-specific, and which also have, like our former presenters have put it, that are citywide, have the citywide approach. So these policies need to really match the practice, and the basis of it is for them as they get developed, let them speak from the practices that are in a certain context. So these were part of my references. Yeah, that's acknowledgement of my professors and mentors and the city that I was working in, the Bill and Melinda Gates, and the UNESCO IHE. Thank you.
Another round of applause to Jane, please. So thank you very much to the presenters, first of all, for submitting your abstracts. And thank you for the audience for your patience in listening. I would like to ask if any of the ushering team is around to come and help distribute microphones. We have 15 minutes to our time, so we are doing well for time. I would like to take some questions from the audience. I will take a set of 3 first. Any question from the audience on this side? Please raise your hand and get my attention. So your question could be to any of the presenters here. You have a microphone. Any question on this side to any of the presenters? All right. To my left, anybody with a question, please raise your hand. There's a hand at the back there. On the left hand, this other side. There's a hand at the back. That's number 1. Anybody else with a question? Do you have a question, sir? There's another question at the top there. If you can get a mic to them quickly. A third question, please. All right, let's take those 2. Please introduce yourself. Tell us which institution you're coming from and who you're addressing your question to. We'll start with the lady on the left.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mary Mariga. I work with the Kakamega County Water and Sanitation Company. Thank you so much for the good presentation. My concern or maybe comment is in the issue of public toilets. And just wondering, when we talk of public toilets, actually we all know anything public is dirty. But is there any way there could be a policy, maybe even collaborating with the Ministry of Health to make sure that all toilets are kept clean, so that we don't have this fear of thinking of I'm going to a dirty public toilet. I wish we would also, maybe that would help us as a nation even to remain healthy. Otherwise, when you go to hotels such as this one, we're comfortable with the toilet. But if you have to go to a non-hotel somewhere, it would be a nightmare. So thank you.
All right. Thank you for that question. We'll take the questions, then we'll allow the presenters an opportunity to respond. Sorry, we have a question here, then we'll take the gentleman upstairs. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Caroline Odero from Kisumu Water and Sanitation Company, and my question goes to the Sanitation team. You talked about capacity building and job creation as a first strategy under the CWIS. And under that, you specifically mentioned delegated management approaches of, say, the sanitation blocks and vacuum truck operations as a very good strategy in ensuring that this is a success. And we also know that these delegation approaches, in most cases, face a lot of political interference. Most politicians, they always have interest. After, say, supporting construction of these abolition blocks, you realize that a politician has a specific group or a kin from within their village whom they would want to run these abolition blocks. So how then are we going to ensure that this does not happen and these particular facilities get to benefit the right people that are supposed to benefit? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. There was one more question upstairs. Did the gentleman come down or changed his mind? Are you still there? Do you have a microphone? No. Can you get a microphone upstairs, or are you able to project your voice? Okay. So maybe as we wait for the microphone to get to him, we'll give Mary a chance maybe to respond to the question on the public toilets. And maybe one of you can take the question on from Kisumu.
Thank you for that question. First, I'd like to say I don't have all the answers. What I know is that we need to do something, and women raising the highest voices, because we are the most sensitive in public toilets. Because even if you put a policy, there are many things in government that are put a policy and they're still not actualized, right? So we need to say we need clean toilets. And like the water service providers here, you can start with you and start preaching loudest. We have set an example. Can we see clean toilets everywhere? So that when people can give an example that this water company is doing clean toilets, and don't say that they have the water, they just have raised the standard so that it's everyone's effort and everyone's responsibility. Plus in your homes too, not just in public places. So we need a collaborative effort rather than policy, because even if we put a policy and you still have bad toilets, it doesn't make a difference. So it's women making the loudest noises and having campaigns and people to support us so that we say, hey, we want clean toilets everywhere. Even if you go to a rural area, we want a clean toilet, whether it's a pit latrine, whether it's a squat toilet. Let's advocate for clean toilets and raising the standards to the highest level, because everyone deserves dignity and we don't have a choice. The thing is that you don't have a choice. You have to use a toilet, right? So it is everyone's responsibility and not, for me, my end, I don't see it as a policy, because there are many nice policies but are not implemented. So it is us saying this is demanding, this is what we want, and using women as advocates for clean toilets everywhere.
Thank you for that, Mary. Maybe we can have a response from either of you from Sanitation.
Thanks. I can take this one, and maybe Sylvia can add. I don't think I introduced myself when I spoke. So my name is Nandita Kotwal, and I'm the Business Development Manager for Sanitation. And happy to hear that question. And it's a really sort of a tough question as well, because, yeah, you're completely right. A lot of this is really good on paper, but when it comes to actually implementing some of these things, you have a lot of political pushback, especially where some of these shared sanitation facilities, for example, are situated. I think we need to step back a bit when we're answering this question. We need to start from the planning side or on the policy side. A good way to do this, and this is something that I know Kenya is doing a lot, is have some national level policy framework for these public-private partnerships at a smaller scale. And if it's embedded within policy, it becomes a little bit easier to implement. Still at the local level, I think it would be the same at the utility level, as having a PPP policy in place for some of these infrastructure contracts for managing them. And it doesn't, again, it really is context specific. And another thing that really helps is making this decision as an evidence-based decision. So looking at what's worked in Kenya, but also in other parts of the world, in East Africa. For example, in Ethiopia, there are small and medium enterprises which are run by, so the public toilets, which at the national level have, in Addis Ababa, for example, there's a consortium, there's an association of women and disabled people actually running these, and this is the source of income. And this is at the national level, there's a policy that has been put in place, so they're mandated to run it with the utilities. And what the utility does is they provide free exhauster truck services, but the actual business is run by these women and youth. And so there is a delegation of management there at the policy level. And it also helps that, they've made this into pretty good businesses when they sell toilet paper, they sell hygiene products within these institutions. So it really is on how we can adapt. But to your point, yes, I think it needs to be embedded more in the policy side of things for it to actually work. And of course, stakeholder consultations. When you're doing these policies, make sure that these political opposition is aligned with what you're doing. You bring them, give them a seat at the table, so that when you're actually implementing, there's no problem or pushback from them. Thanks.
Yeah, maybe to end also on that, in programs or projects, of course, like we need the political will. And of course, these are a condition to an enabling environment. Therefore, maybe like we always had that we involve stakeholders, what you need to do is really have an analysis of your stakeholders, have them categorized into like those that have influence, those that have interest, so that maybe when you press them through your programs or your projects, then you don't have like conflicting laws or interest or the influence. And now maybe even at a time you can take, like if they are influencers, to maybe train them or capacity build them to really also support your project. So it's key that you really analyze your stakeholders and align them well.
Thank you very much for your responses. I'll take the last question from the gentleman upstairs. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Paul Odongo from Kakamega Wash Parliament, and my concern is on raising the status of public toilets in Kenya. In my take is that we need to consider the needs and demand of the people at the periphery, because you are so much focusing on toilets, but if you go to schools, the education guidelines, there's an issue of ratio of how many people per the latrines. So I don't know how collaboratively are you working with the government to ensure that there's adequate toilet in terms of demands for these children, because during the when they are experiencing the menstrual issues, you find that there's a big challenge. So I don't know how you're working with the key department in the government to ensure that there's adequate toilets as per the needs and the demand. So if we focus so much on the public toilets, maybe in town, what about the people at the periphery? What is the rate of open defecation at the village level? Thank you.
Thank you for that. Anytime you walk out and go to another place, it's a public toilet. So it doesn't matter whether you're in a school, institution. So I think so that I clarify that. So if children are going to school, the toilets they use are public toilets, right? So The thing is, it's an effort to raise the standards wherever we are. And if you notice my last slide, I talked about suitability and access. There's usually a certain ratio that is set by schools, by the way, that if you have a certain population, you need to have this number of toilets. I'm not sure of the ratio, I don't want to state it, but it is there in government. And the question is, what are we going to do to make the toilets better? At the end of it all is that, what are we going to do, wherever you're in the country? And I wasn't specific on saying urban places, I said everywhere, right? My thing was, whether it's a pit latrine, and this is the public toilet we are using, can it be a good public latrine, right? Wherever it is, whether it's a portable toilet, whether it is a squat toilet, wherever, let's raise the standards. I'm coming from private sector and coming from a place where I feel that people don't see this, and it's something that I need to talk about and tell people, hey, we need to look at this as a standard. We need to make it better wherever you are. Even if I went to a certain village and I went to the, let's say to the market center, that there will be a clean toilet. It doesn't matter wherever you are in Kenya. So I'm not focusing, my thing was not on urban places. It was anywhere in Kenya that we need to find a good toilet.
All right, thank you. So, members, we are coming to the end of our session. We have one last burning question here. Then we can proceed to lunch, and I will give you directions about how we are going to do that. So one last burning question. Please go ahead, introduce yourself and where you're coming from.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Alvin Awor, and I'm the Speaker, Busia Youth Parliament. Now, on the issue of upgrading the public toilets, my attention is drawn to ensuring the conversation we are having. Is it possible that we make it a people conversation, borrowing notes from the Ministry of Transport? Is it possible that we have a way of feedback? Because if we are going to be coming up with policies, what are the ways we are going to use to ensure that these policies are being implemented? If you say that, for instance, if the standard has been upgraded, and this is the standard that is acceptable for public toilets, what is the way of feedback? I mean, you're always told, ongea usikike for the Ministry of Transport. What ways are we able to come up with to ensure that there is feedback? That way, I think it's an easier way to ensure that the policies are being implemented effectively. Thank you.
I think that's why we are here, to start a conversation on what's possible. What are we going to do about it? We're in this country and we are not moving, and we need to do something about it. So ladies, what are we going to do about it? That's why these conferences are here. What are we going to do about it so that anywhere we go to Kenya, whether you're using a pit latrine, whether it's a squat toilet, whether it's a Western, whatever, it's a good standard that a woman can say, enyewe hapo ni pasafi. Yeah.
Maybe just to add on that, every time we have like a new policy coming in, we normally have a couple of community engagements. So my call is, every time you see these community engagements, you find people going around on buses, calling people for these community engagements. But normally the community doesn't show up. So the next time you have this policy, they normally get gazetted. Kindly, let's join in and pass our word. That is how it can be heard.
All right, so thank you very much for those answers, and I like how we are concluding. Yesterday we were challenged by the Cabinet Secretary that we should not read from the Book of Lamentations, that we should also read which other book? Who was here yesterday? Which book are we told to read from? Revelations, that we can identify the challenges, but we need to leave this forum when we are thinking about what are the practical solutions that we can actually implement. So, and one way we've been told, when there is public participation, that we should actually go there as professionals in the sector. Let's go and give our opinion, whether we are coming from the government sector or from the private sector, that the bills are shaped by our contribution. And I think the Cabinet Secretary mentioned that there was a first round of public participation on what is a session paper in Parliament. and there's going to be a second round. So if it is actually gazetted, if it says it's in your public, in a hall near you, please do go and respond as stakeholders in the sector. So with that, we have come to the end of this session. I'd like to thank all of you because we have kept time. It's exactly 1:30. We are only 30 minutes. We have been managed to recover the time we lost in the morning, so we are only 30 minutes behind schedule. That means we are going to extend our lunch up till to 2:30, and we will resume at 2:30. I would like to ask you to just look at your program, to look at the program in the afternoon. As the same, we'll have various concurrent sessions. One will be happening here, but there are other 3 which are happening in the other rooms, which are Hibiscus, Iris, and Orchard. Some of them are structured as panel discussions, and others are abstract presentation. So please select the one that interests you and attend. I'm finally happy to hear 2 members of the Youth Parliament. Who knew there was a Youth Wash Parliament before they came here? Hands up if you knew. Now, before you go to lunch, you know one more thing, right? And I think they would like to invite you to attend a convener session that they are going to have here at 2:30, and they'll be talking about what next, particularly for the youth. So there's going to be a convener session. Women who are not youth and are youthful like me, we have our session after that. After tea break in the evening, there's a session that is being hosted by WIWAS. So the Cabinet Secretary said she's member number 1. Can we become member number 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? So, and let this conference be a call to action as we were challenged. So in terms of lunch is being served downstairs, past the exhibition. At the end, there's a staircase where there was a cocktail yesterday. But meal vouchers are being handed at this door as you're leaving. So please collect as you're going, but let us remember to keep the COVID protocols on social distancing. A last round of applause to this panel before they leave the stage. And another one for yourselves for actually listening. So thank you and enjoy your lunch.